What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. First of all, if you've never dipped a molasses cookie in a cup of almond coffee, swear to God, better than peanut butter and jelly. Okay, better than peanut butter and jelly. I hope you're excited about this video. This is probably the most common question that I get asked. Is, hey dude, I just don't know what to write about. Like, I see you talk about journaling all the time and I want to give it a shot, but I just don't know what to write about. And so here we are. And one second, one more sip of coffee. My daily reminder for myself and for other people is take some time to check in with yourself today, okay? I know I repeat it a lot, but to me, it's perfect. You know, it is. It's a perfect reminder. And it does highlight sort of the intention behind journaling for me, which is to check in with myself. Yeah. And so I made these journals. It says, take some time to check in with yourself today. And so hopefully by the end of this video, you and I will be journaling with the same intent, with the same approach, with the same, sort of energy and focus in mind. If you'd like to, write in the same journal, I actually sell these journals. I made a bunch of extra ones because I just anticipated that some people might want to join my journaling tribe, which I think is pretty cool. I do sell these journals and they're at markanthonyjoe.com. I will also have Murph, the guy who makes all of my YouTube videos. I'll have Murph put a link to the journals in the show notes here. Or is it called show notes? I'm used to podcasting. I don't know if it's called show notes on YouTube. But anyway, I'll have him put a link. Okay. In my experience, the hardest part about journaling is journaling consistently. Like once you get through the first 30 days of consistency, well, then it becomes habitual, it becomes pretty easy. But man, it's just hard to be consistent. And the right journal makes it a lot easier to write in. I don't know why. I've had journals where I just felt so uninspired to write in them. And then I've had journals that I felt really inspired to write in. And I think this journal is going to be a journal that, makes you feel inspired to write and help you get over the hump. Journaling regularly is one of the most therapeutic and productive habits that I've ever developed. Ever. For real. Everybody looks at me like I'm disciplined and I'm effective and productive and all these things. I'm telling you, journaling is one of the most therapeutic and productive habits that I've ever developed. What my journal is to me, two things. One, it's just a safe space. I find that in today's world, where we are more connected than we've ever been, we are simultaneously and very ironically also more disconnected and distant than we've ever been from one another. And a lot of people just don't have a person in their life that they feel 100% comfortable being transparent with and being open and honest and sharing their deepest, darkest secrets and aspirations and their dreams and, their insecurities and all those things. But, if we keep those things bottled up inside of us, at least for me, keeping those things bottled up inside of me was so toxic for so long. And of course, it is ideal probably to have people in your life that you feel comfortable being 100% open and honest and transparent with. But until you get to that point, because I think it takes a building up of courage and security, for you to even be willing to share that with anybody, regardless of, the kind of friend or, person that they are to you. Until you get to that point, I think a journal is a really, really great first step, right? It is a safe space where you can just let those things out. You can write them down, in a safe space, but it's just as therapeutic as if you were talking about it with a friend, because you're talking about it with yourself. Or if you're religious, you could think about it as if you're talking about it with God. And talking about it is talking about it. The more you talk about it, the less power those things have over you. And so my journal is that safe space for me where I can just pour all of my, most intimately held thoughts and beliefs and aspirations and fears and all those things. And then the other thing that my journal is for me, and this is really at the core of my day-to-day approach to journaling, my journal is also my accountability partner. Okay? I know that sounds crazy, but at some point, I don't know when, but at some point, it just occurred to me that nobody cares if I just waste my life. I realized one day that I have so much more potential than I'm actually embodying on a daily basis. I could be so much better than I am. My life could be so much better than it is. But if I don't embrace that potential, nobody's gonna care. Nobody's gonna lose a moment of sleep over my wasted potential. Nobody is going to care if my life looks the way it does today forever. Nobody would have cared if I kept breaking the law and chose to spend the rest of my life in prison. Nobody would have cared. The whole world would have just kept on spinning. Like when I was in prison, that's what I realized. When I was in prison, you think you're so important before you like have this realization. And this realization of our insignificance in the world, it's powerful, man. It's liberating and it's empowering. It's great. It sounds pessimistic, but it's not. It's a great thing. But when I was in prison, my family, they still met for Thanksgiving and Christmas. My ex-girlfriend, I guess she just got a new boyfriend. My dog who used to sleep on my bed every night, just started sleeping on my niece's bed every night. Like my old employer, they just hired a different employee to do the job that I used to do. The whole world just keeps on moving, right? So you can choose to waste your life and nobody's gonna lose a moment of sleep over it. And furthermore, if you say, okay, cool, well, I have all this potential, my life could look like this, I have these dreams, these aspirations, and you get motivated for a day and then you commit to it. The reality is, once you're an adult, very few people, if anybody, has anybody in their life that is going to hold them accountable to doing what they said they were going to do or to becoming the person that they said they wanted to become. Like nobody is going to check in on you and say, hey, how did you show up today? Did you show up the way you said you wanted to? And at the core of my journaling philosophy, my journal does that for me. Okay, I realized that I could create some sort of external accountability that I have to answer to every single day to hold myself accountable to showing up as the man that I decided I wanted to show up as, or to following through on the commitments that I make to myself. Like, yes, sometimes, people can do that in small doses or in spurts with themselves. They for the most part, they make a commitment to themselves, they follow through, and they have that internal dialogue where, yes, but this is actually different in a small but also major way. So because my journal is my accountability partner, and because I'm going to suggest that you use your journal in the same way, I have to say that there is a prerequisite exercise that I think that everybody should do at some point in the beginning of their journaling journey, okay? And the exercise is something that you've heard me talk about likely before, whether it's on the podcast or on Instagram. The exercise is simply answering the question, what does the absolute best version of you look like? Okay? What does the best version of you look like? All right? In your opinion, because nobody else can answer this question for you. Hang on. One more sip of coffee. Man, that's good. A good thing to do as you get started is just write out as many descriptive questions as you can possibly think of. I'm talking like, how do they dress? What kind of language do they use? Do they swear? Do they not swear? Are they religious? Are they spiritual? Do they have kids? Do they have a partner? What kind of partner are they? What do they do for work? What do they do in their spare time? What hobbies do they have? What passions do they have? Are they educated? What are their core values? What kind of music do they listen to? I mean, there's just silly things. Like as many descriptive questions as you can possibly think of, write them down. And then you want to answer all those questions about the best version of you. For real. You want to go through and be as detailed as you possibly can. You want to come up with an image of a person, a real person, somebody that you can see and almost you can feel them, You want that image to be a real target for you, okay? As if it is somebody that you know in your real life. Like, yeah, I know that person just like I know Tom at the office, okay? That's step one of the exercise is describe the best version of you in as much detail as you possibly can. You can even, go into physical appearance and things like that. Two very important questions that need to be answered sort of separately, but as a part of the same exercise, because these two deserve their own specific attention. The first one is, what are that person's core values? Okay, what are their core values? Okay, a lot of things are important to us. And I think a lot of times in life, sometimes we get taken off of our path because our values are conflicting. This is important to me, but this is important to me too. And, then we can just get caught up making quick decisions without actually basing them off of any, insight into who we are or how we want to show up. A perfect example of how core values can influence your behavior and how you should use them to influence your decision-making process is, before I went to prison, if you would have asked me, hey, Mark, what's more important to you, money or freedom? I would have told you freedom, except every single day I risked my freedom to make money, right? So I was placing my value of money above my value of freedom, when really on the list of my values, freedom came before money, right? And so on a day-to-day basis, if you take the time to identify what your core values are, then these are the things that are most important to you. This should be 8 or less values, okay? These are your most important ones. Well, now on a day-to-day basis, when you come to a crossroads and you have two values that are conflicting, but one of them is your core value, you make the decision to honor your core value, and your core values influence how you show up in your decision-making process in that way. And so the reason why this exercise is so important is because once you identify them, then you can hold yourself accountable to honoring your core values in your journal every day, right? When you take that time to check in with yourself, you can acknowledge that, you have these parameters, you have these standards that you can hold yourself accountable to. Because before you identify your own core values, there are no standards. It's really ambiguous what's right and what's wrong. Which direction should I go, left or right? You don't know, because you haven't taken the time to create those standards for yourself to hold yourself accountable to. And then the second branch off question, which is equally as important as the core values one, is it's more simple. It's, what roles does that person play? The best version of you. What roles does that person play in their life? Okay, for me, it's husband, father, leader in his community, obviously employer, and then also individual. I want to, as an individual, contribute to society. And the reason why you want to identify the roles that person plays in their life is because then you sort of want to divvy those roles up into individual buckets, right? So I have a husband bucket, a father bucket, a leader bucket, an employer bucket, and then I have a personal bucket. And then every single day I try to sort of assess, am I making regular deposits in each one of those buckets, or am I just pouring everything into the same bucket? I often use the example that sometimes you see people, they become very successful financially. They're winning their companies, whatever, they start a company and they grow, or, they're a CEO at a company that they work for or something. They're very successful, but they're not happy, right? And to me, how I think about that is that person spent the last X number of years or however long, they spent all that time pouring everything they had into their career or their business bucket, but then that bucket got full and they realized that all the other buckets are empty. That's how you can be quote unquote successful in life but still be miserable and depressed, right? And I don't want to be that, and I know that you don't either. And so it's important to identify what roles does the best version of you play in their life, and make sure you're divvying up that conceptually into different buckets, and then you're making just regular deposits. Maybe it's not every day, but you do have to take time to self-assess regularly and say, am I making deposits at all in these buckets? Because if not, then there's no way I'm going to get closer to being the best version of me, because the best version of me plays these roles in his life or her life, and he or she does that very well. And right now I'm not doing this very well. And so this bucket staying empty is keeping me from becoming that person. So when I say online, hey, take some time to check in with yourself today, it is, literally take some time, open up your journal and have a conversation. It's almost like having a conversation with yourself in the mirror, but this is more real to me. There's something about writing it down that just makes it more real for me, and I know that it'll be the same for you. Okay, so the goal, it should go without saying, is simply to inch toward closer and closer and closer and closer towards becoming the best version of you over time. And when you realize, or when you understand that Your life, as it looks right now, your life is simply just a product of your habits, rituals, and routines over the past, let's say 3 months or 6 months or a year or 5 years or 10 years, right? The things that you've done, the person that you have consistently showed up as has created the life in which you live right now. Okay, well, when you start holding yourself accountable to the habits, rituals, and routines of the best version of you, your life is not going to change in one day. But now that you've taken the time to identify how would that person show up on a daily basis? What roles does that person play? What core values does that person adhere to on a daily basis? And you adopt those things, what you're doing is you're literally planting the seeds that eventually will grow and create the life that that person is living. That is how you not only over time, you sort of train yourself to show up as the best version of you with some accountability, but also you're going to produce the outcomes of that person's habits, rituals, and routines, which likely are all the things that most people strive for. Strong relationships and a strong sense of community, financial security, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the last thing that I will say is that as with almost everything else, this is going to be most effective for you. Journaling is going to be most effective for you if you do it every day. Now, there's a really specific reason for why you should do it every day. And that reason is going back to what this is. The second thing that this is, the role that it plays for me, it's the accountability, right? It's the accountability. It's having to answer to someone or something outside of myself and say, I did it or I didn't do it. Is a lot of times we will do something, let's say, we make a decision or we do something throughout the day or respond to a situation a certain way that is just really below the standard that we would like to show up as, okay? Well, what happens when you don't actually have to answer to anybody about that is that you just sort of just push it to the back of your mind, and it's easy to give yourself grace on settling for a version of you that's less than the one you have the potential to be. And so you push it to the back of your mind, but before you know it, what happens is you develop a mental or a physical habit of responding to situations in that way, or to cutting a corner, or to being lazy, or to being resentful, or whatever it is. You develop a habit, and over time, that habit grows and it becomes more and more and more destructive. And a lot of times we as humans, we have a tendency to let bad habits go until they're at the point of almost destroying our lives. We'll let a bad habit sort of just grow and grow and grow and grow until it disrupts our relationships or our productivity or whatever, to a point where we cannot even ignore it anymore. Well, why let it get that far? Well, the reason why we let it get that far is because we don't have to answer to anybody about it. We don't have to own up to it. We don't have to acknowledge it. We can just keep pushing it to the back of our mind until we cannot ignore it anymore. Well, when you check in with yourself every day, well, then you catch those bad habits. Before they have a chance of even developing into a habit, much less getting to the point where they're completely disrupting our lives. So as with everything else, journaling consistently on a daily basis is going to be the best approach, just so that you can course correct on a day-to-day basis, rather than waiting and adopting bad habits and getting into a bad routine and then having to overcorrect and come back. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope that this was helpful. Again, check out the journals that we made. These are great. It's leather bound and obviously custom. It says take some time to check in with yourself today on the cover. If you're local to St. Louis, make sure you stop by Ohm & Coffee Co. We sell these journals here in store, actually, at Ohm & Coffee Co. Other than that, please like this video if you enjoyed it or got any value out of it, and then subscribe to my channel. I'll talk to you guys next time.